Hello, everybody. Just wanted to make a quick little video. This is something I actually discussed in my stream today, but I wanted to kind of go over one of the changes that came for the AWC. People have been asking me what my thoughts on the matter are, specifically changes to allow players to use add-ons in tournaments, which is something that really has never happened before. For the longest time, players were basically subject to using essentially no add-ons in a LAN environment, and people thought that was the most pure form of gameplay. When I competed in the Burning Crusade, Wrath of the Lich King, Cataclysm, anyone who competed in tournaments knew to play online with no add-ons. You wanted to essentially train online as how you were going to play in a LAN tournament. Now, keep in mind, there wasn't a lot of online tournaments. Most of the tournaments that were available were Major League Gaming, some of the ESL tournaments, the occasional online tournament, but very rare. And then, of course, qualifying to a regional tournament, and that qualified you to BlizzCon. So all of these LAN environments, and it was understood within all the players that if you're going to be a person that competes in tournaments, you're essentially not going to use add-ons. And if you did use add-ons, you're going to put yourself at a massive disadvantage because you have players literally practicing the entire year, like myself, without add-ons. And if you're someone that is only practicing a couple weeks before the tournament, obviously it's not going to be super beneficial for you. So that's kind of a rule and a tradition that stayed for a really long time. Now, in Legion, Battle for Azeroth, even a little bit earlier, people started getting heavily into scripting. So they realized there was a couple really good coders like Collective and like Dizzy, and I'm sure there was more that I'm not giving credit to, but those are the two that stick out in my mind, who, when you had them on your team, it was a massive advantage because they could essentially create add-ons in the game with macros. Players still use a lot of these really comprehensive macros. They take, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 macros to press that players can move around their UI, add additional debuffs to their frames, because the default UI in World of Warcraft is really limiting. Sometimes you can't even see the debuffs that you want to dispel because it only displays a certain amount of them. So over the years, even the arena frame in WoW was added, and then a trinket tracker, I believe, was added as well. So Blizzard is slowly but surely implementing some of the add-ons that were kind of deemed mandatory in arena and actually added them into the default game. And I think it's only a matter of time that this change came in. So you can see these are the add-ons that were approved: Gladius, S Arena, Omni CC, and big debuffs and plate buffs. So Gladius and S Arena, these are the frames that are going to be displaying DR trackers, the cooldown on dispel, and then basically they're just like cast frames, trinket trackers, and a DR tracker, if I didn't already say that. That's what these are primarily going to be used for. Omni CC, big debuffs and plate buffs. These are mostly going to be used for just additional information on the UI. Nothing too crazy. You're going to be able to, for example, with plate buffs, if a mage uses Icy Veins, you'll see Icy Veins over his little frame in game. Stuff like big debuffs, Omni CC, it'll show like when your partner's in a polymorph. It'll change his little icon from a mage to a polymorph, making it easier for you to actually identify that he's crowd controlled. Little things like that. So nothing, I mean, they're definitely big. They also allow you to see additional information like the amount of debuffs a target has. So you can see those really important debuffs, and it'll prioritize certain debuffs like polymorph, like fear, like Hammer of Justice, the things you really want to dispel. So it definitely helps out quite a bit. Some add-ons that they didn't allow is stuff like Omnibar. So there's nothing that you can do here. Like Omnibar is not allowed. So Omnibar is one of the add-ons that allowed you to track cooldowns such as like Ice Block or Blink or Shadow Step or Kidney Shot. And I think that's really good because Omnibar, in my opinion, is one of the things that is just way over the top in terms of the information that you are given You can make a lot of preemptive plays, and that it's debatable. Like some people will say, man, it's way more skillful to have all the information and be able to make preemptive plays with that information. And then other people will say, some of the old school players will say, it's a lot more skill intensive to have to track that stuff in your head and try to make outplays that way and keep people guessing. And when they don't have all the information, that's when you can take advantage of that fact. So there's arguments to be made on both sides. But yeah, essentially they added DR trackers and then really nice, convenient frames for the players to use. Now, a lot of these things in OmniCC, big debuffs and plate buffs were already being used by players with really comprehensive macros. The big thing, I think, overall is going to be S Arena and Gladius, like the fact that you can track DRs. And there's players that think that gives a massive advantage to certain classes, like rogue mage players. When they have a lot of DRs they can rotate through, or mage warlock players. Classes that rely heavily on crowd control are going to be slightly favored when it comes to tracking DRs. And I think that's true. But I also, part of me feels like it was a little silly that certain classes just performed really high in a LAN environment. Classes like Elemental Shaman with a really low cooldown shear, Interrupt that you couldn't really track, was good. Doesn't have a lot of DRs. Stuff like Warrior, it doesn't have a lot of DRs. Death Knight, Windwalker Monk, like on your Windwalker Monk, right now it's essentially, unless you're overlapping with your team, you can't actually mess up, a DR stun. Or paralysis. These things just have too long of cooldowns, where if you're playing in a LAN environment, you don't really have to be concerned. Whereas a mage and a rogue, knowing the exact timing of your kidney shot and the exact timing of when you land a polymorph is going to be really key. Now, I've kind of explained all of that. People ask me what my personal opinion is and take on this is, as someone that's been around for a really long time. I have always been someone who prefers the game in an environment where there is no add-ons at all. If it was up to me, the Blizzard default UI, the WoW default UI would be a lot better. It'd be more customizable. You could display more information, but there wouldn't be, interrupt trackers. There wouldn't be, DR trackers even. Like, I wish the game was played in an environment where there was essentially no add-ons, and you kind of had to you had to consider the cooldowns of what cooldowns the enemy team has. There's specific situations where, like, as a team, you can make an all-in on a rogue. It's like, oh man, that rogue, I think he Cloak of Shadowed like around a minute ago. Like, we're tracking it. Like, let's try to do an all-in, and without the exact number. You might make that all in. He trades out Cloak of Shadows. Whereas if you do know the exact number, it's up in 5 seconds. Maybe you just say forget about it. You don't waste that go. So I think it's silly being able to track basically everything. That's why I'm really happy that there's no Omnibar. Yeah. Anyways, I digress. Anyways, I just feel like the game would be best if there was just no add-ons at all, and I think the skill cap of the game would go way higher. People could make more impressive plays, and there's just little things you could do within the game to outplay a little bit more. But that being said, with the way World of Warcraft is now and the way the competitive scene right now is, it is essentially impossible to track people using cooldowns online. So when we have these online cups, it is almost impossible to enforce people not using add-ons. There's nothing you could really do about it. So inevitably, players will use add-ons, and players that play in the online cups and don't use add-ons will be at a massive, massive, massive disadvantage. So any player worth their salt that cares about winning is going to use add-ons 100%, even if it's just a few. Period. End of discussion. I don't know any tournament players that don't use any add-ons, and if they do, they're just a liability to their team, to be honest with you. Now, what normally happens is after the online cups, players will shut off all their add-ons. And in the past, we see teams like Rockets Esports is an example, Radipai's RMP, where they play phenomenally online. They're putting out the most beautiful crowd control chains you have ever seen. And then when they get to a LAN environment without that information, their composition is simply much more difficult to play than a composition like Windwalker Death Knight, and they end up losing these matchups that they were winning online, but now in a LAN environment without that kind of information, they're losing. And a part of me feels like that's silly. Like I said, wish no add-ons were available, but I also think it's really silly with how many cups there are online and the amount of online tournaments that there are, that it's I don't think it's good for players to be practicing one way the entire year, and then for this little bitty LAN tournament have to shut off everything they've done and prepare and practice in a totally new, brand new way for the tournament scene. I don't think it's consistent for the year, and I feel like we end up seeing teams and players play significantly worse in a LAN environment than what they're doing online, and I think that's kind of confusing, doesn't really make sense, and I think it's only been a matter of time with how many online tournaments we've really had, and Twitter's been blowing up recently with opinions from both sides about how so much of the skill of being a LAN player is lost right now, and maybe. I can definitely see both sides of the arguments. I've seen all the arguments, I've read all the arguments, but I just feel like at the end of the day, the most important thing is just like having consistency in the tournaments during the year, Players should be able to practice throughout the entire year with what they're using in these tournaments, and if these add-ons are essentially deemed mandatory in online play, they shouldn't be banned in offline play. So I don't mind the fact that they added this. I think we're going to see some of these setup comps like Rogue Mage have more of an advantage, but we have seen Rogue Mage teams in the past win LAN tournaments anyways, so I don't know. It's definitely in a slight favor for teams that have a lot of crowd control, diminishing returns, but at the same time, I just want to see a world where it's consistent throughout the year, and that's like my overall thoughts on this. What are your guys' opinions? I'm actually really curious what you guys think, because there's a lot of purists that think that there should be no add-ons, but I just think it's unrealistic, like I said, unless that's something we're going to be doing throughout the entire year. With just how many online tournaments there are, it's just it's a little strange to me. So I'm actually kind of glad that they made this decision. But yeah, what do you guys think? Do you guys think players should be allowed these add-ons? Do you think they should be allowed more add-ons? Where do you draw that line in the sand where, this is the only information you're giving? Should they add stuff like Omnibar? I personally say no, but maybe some people say yes. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, my little rant. If you guys liked the video, give it a thumbs up. Make sure you follow the channel, get notifications, and yeah, definitely check out the stream, twitch.tv/Venruki. Peace out, ladies and gentlemen, and like I said, let me know what you guys think below in the comments. Bye!